Hello plant lovers, Matthew in Melbourne welcoming you back to my channel. Thank you for finding me. If this is your first time, I grow orchids here in Melbourne that are cold, cool, intermediate, and I don't have any heated greenhouses or humidifiers or anything like that. They either grow inside or outside or get out of the pool. So if that's of any interest, do hit subscribe. I post every week. I am a complete amateur, but I'm here to share my musings and learnings through the world of orchids. And look at this showstopper. Isn't it amazing? It is the most fabulous flower, and I've got 3 spikes and they're all open. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for all the blooms to open before I made this video to show you. And here it is. It is, ta-da! There you go. Beallara Tropic Lily Hilo Spaceship. Where do people find these names? Hilo Spaceship, anyway. Whatever the name, you're a beautiful orchid. So let's have a little look at this orchid, which is stunning, and talk about its care and all those important things, and revel in the beauty of the flowers. Okay, so first things first, it is very early spring, literally the first days of spring here in Australia, and it has well opened, as you can see. So these do tend to flower in spring, but also sometimes in summer. And I have read that they only flower once a year. So there you go. Lucky me, it has shown a sensational desire to flower this season. And as you might be able to see, there are 3 pseudobulbs and only 2 of them have bloomed, and 1 pseudobulb has got 2 spikes. Okay, so let's get to the basics. Beallara is one of those hybrid mega mixes, and it's actually quite complex. It's got 4 different parent types, and they are Brassica, Cochleola, Miltonia, and Odontoglossum. It really is an orchid hybrid mega mix. Obviously bred for different traits, but clearly flower size is one of them. So I have been looking around at different types of the Beallara with Hilo as a prefix in the name, and they all have quite large, beautiful flowers. So clearly that's the Hilo thing, the size of the bloom. I've also read that Beallara are often fragrant. I'm here to tell you, alas, plant lovers, beautiful as this is, not an ounce of fragrance. Hey ho, you can't have it all. I've got my Colmonara behind me, which is filling the room with fragrance. And behind me here, bit of Shari baby work. So I'm well suited from other orchids on the fragrance front here, but let us look more closely at this. So firstly, the flowers, because they're right in your face, as you can see, they are really quite big blooms. And so it's sort of white with burgundy and tips of yellow in the inside. Just stunning, amazing blooms. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 blooms per spike, but I think you can certainly get more. And aren't they just divine? So Beallara is, as I said, a mega mix of those 4 different types of orchids, and that can often throw a bit of a spanner in the works sometimes about care, but I just treat this as an oncidium. So it gets bright indirect light, it gets moderate water when it's dry-ish but not completely dry, and I do tend to ease up on watering and stop fertilizing in winter anyway. So that seems to be the care that it is loving. As to humidity, it's pretty easy going. I give everything a mist in the morning with my cup of tea as I wander around. Otherwise, nothing particularly special, and it's not high maintenance on the humidity front. And it is potted in a terracotta pot. But in fact, plant lovers, I'm actually cheating. It's still in its plastic pot. The reason is I bought this, it arrived. I was then just, testing out pots to see what was going to be the right kind of size, and I popped it in this one just to see if it would fit and left it there. What I then noticed was it was in spike, so I couldn't repot it while it was in spike. So once these flowers have died off, I will then repot it properly in the pot, and I will use pretty generic orchid mix for me, which is medium-sized bark with a bit of perlite, with a bit of charcoal, with a tiny bit of sphagnum moss, and the secret ingredient, mycorrhizal fungi, and a couple of grains of a slow-release generic fertilizer. Other than that, the care is really simple. So like an oncidium, don't overwater it, but don't let it completely dry out. It's got really quite large pseudobulbs, and mine are a little wrinkly, but I don't think that's a problem. Bright indirect light as per an oncidium. I have read that it likes stronger light than an oncidium, but slightly less than a cattleya. How you could possibly gauge that, I don't know. So mine gets exactly the same conditions as my oncidiums, and look, it's fine. Fertiliser wise, pretty general again for me. So in the mix, there is a couple of grains of slow release fertiliser. And then in the warmer months, so spring, summer, autumn, it gets fed about once a fortnight with a diluted liquid based general fertiliser. You can use orchid specific ones, or you can also just use a seaweed based solution, which is like a tonic, which I give. But I give a bit of everything as well. I also use a bloom specific orchid fertilizer, which again you dilute. And I tend to use that when the spikes are just showing before the flowers have opened. But really you can use any fertilizer that is suitable for orchids. I always just dilute it more than it says on the bottle generally, because I feel that overfeeding plants can be a problem and it leads them down a dangerous path, like the best of us. So I tend to dilute it to about 1/8 of what it suggests on the bottle. I feel this is going to be a vigorous grower, and it needs to be, because quite clearly we get blooms from new pseudobulbs. So they'll need to mature in a year, which is very much like an oncidium or Miltoniopsis or Miltonia, etc., etc. So nothing new there. You've got to promote vegetative growth, and the way to do that is just give it the right conditions: light, water, fertilizer, ease off a little bit in winter. So I'm imagining that once these flowers have died off, or just before they've died off, I'm going to start to see the new growths around the bottom, and hopefully there'll be 2, so that I can get 2 new pseudobulbs and I can get multiple blooms. But the great thing is it has sent up 2 spikes from 1 bulb, so clearly it's capable of doing that and putting on an amazing show. So there we are, Beallara Tropic Lily Hilo Spaceship. There's a mouthful. Now, I did get this because I kind of just wanted the size of the bloom, to be honest. And I'm sometimes a bit, not nervous, but you know, very large flowers can be really blousy and sort of a bit overblown. But this one I find is really, really elegant. So of course, I've gone hunting looking for more Beallara, and there aren't that many available in Australia, strangely enough. So be interesting to see what's available in your neck of the woods, if there's more alternatives. But anyway, I'll keep looking. This one is stunning, and I also like the fact that it's essentially, well, it's sort of like an ivory base, not really white, but I like the fact that the flowers are quite large and white. I don't really have many orchids of this sort of colouring, so that was the other reason I chose this one. Anyway, it is beautiful. The flowers have already been open for quite a while, and they are going to be long lasting, I feel in my heart. So there we are. I reckon you're going to get at least 6 weeks, if not more, flower time out of this. So one of those orchids that gives great value, bang for buck. There we are, plant lovers. Beallara Tropic Lily Hilo Spaceship is a fabulous orchid, super easy to grow. I'm growing mine indoors all year. I think it could take colder winter nighttime temperatures as long as it was not wet, but I'm just not going to risk it. I've decided that most of my oncidiums and oncidium type intergenerics just do better when the temperature is a little bit warmer in winter at night than I can give it outside. So unless it is a cold specific species or type of oncidium or odontoglossum, of which I have a few, they all, I've decided, are now going to winter indoors. So this one is definitely a cool intermediate grower. I don't think it's going to like extreme heat, and it's not going to thrive in cold temperatures, I feel. So that kind of moderate path, which is the path that we all like. So the temperature that your house is, unless you live in the tropics obviously, is probably going to suit this down to the ground. There we are, plant lovers. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for subscribing if this is your bag. And I look forward to seeing you next week with something else. There are lots of things in spike and lots of things about to burst forth, one of which is an orchid type that I've never bloomed before. So I am very excited about that, but it's still in the early stages. So that might be another month before the blooms are open. But anyway, watch this space, do subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next week.